we talked about the roster and being a lot of uncapped players or under 10 cap players for the United States. These players are trying to prove themselves. So although in the minds of Vlatko Andonovski or even players like Becky Sauerbrunn, it's like, okay, let's see what we can do. And let's just play and see what kind of formation we can do and different players in different positions. If I'm a young player that has under 10 caps for the United States, and I know that January camp with Vlatko Andonovski is coming up, and then the World Cup in 23, I am putting everything out there on the field against Australia because I want to prove my worth. I want to prove that I deserve to be called back time and time again. And if I don't start the first match, I'm going to try to start this second match, which I think we'll see some parity in starters throughout these two games against Australia.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think in terms of you and I sort of taking a look at this roster and then doing something like here's our starting 11 prediction. I think you and I in our content planning both kind of agreed, like there's so many new faces here that it would be hard to perhaps maybe nail something like that down. So I think you and I both agree that we wanted to take a little bit of a different route, maybe a familiar route for some people who have been with us listening to our show for a while now, but maybe kind of like the vibe of a wish list, like, oh, here's what we'd like to see, like sort of get time in this match. But maybe we can go through it together and we'll just sort of take it down line by line. And Lisa, you know where I got to start. I mean, we're big fans of defense here. So we're going to start from the goal all the way to the front line. I mean,
Bless you.
I got to come correct. It's 3 new goalkeepers. Well, not new, but 2 new goalkeepers in Jane Campbell with less than 7 caps under her belt in this United States Women's Senior National Team program. It's Bella Bixby, Jane Campbell, Casey Murphy, who are getting the looks in this training camp. Who would you like to see starting in goal for this one?
Honestly, I would love to see Casey Murphy, but my gut instinct thinks that it'll be Jane Campbell as a player who has been on the roster. She got the call up for the Olympics, but didn't see a lot of time as she was the third string at this point. And now when you look at these 3, it's almost like Jane Campbell has to be that first string. And she deserves that. As a goalkeeping position, you rarely get rotated around. Rarely. So I think we'll see Jane Campbell start. I know Bella Bixby has gone through a lot off the field with a lot of family heartbreak and things like that. So I'm not sure where she stands emotionally. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she didn't see time just to try to protect her mentally and things like that. But I foresee Jane Campbell getting a start, and I would hope to see Casey Murphy. I don't know. We could even see 45s.
I was going to say, like, what if we see like a little bit of a split at some point?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised by that either, and also wouldn't hate it. Get your goalkeepers some looks. Maybe put your money where your mouth is a little bit. Talking about how this was going to be an important time for all of these players. That part of it was going to, be a little bit of a hardcore evaluation, in that the coaching staff is going to get a real look and see if players are going to rise up to this challenge, and if they don't, the coaching staff will find out very quickly whether or not these particular players are going to continue on in this next era of national team competition moving forward. But I'm with you. I think when it comes to the goalkeeping right here, you've got two of the goalkeepers who have 0 caps under the belt. They're in these camps, obviously, for their very strong and impressive NWSL play. So I would love to see them get some time during these friendlies if they're both capable of that and have the space for that. But I look at Jane Campbell and her time with the national team, and it's hard to believe she's someone who has been in these camps very frequently, in and out. But that 7 caps under her belt is not a large number, right? And this is a position that is probably one of the bigger in terms of being under the spotlight constantly. And we've seen lack of rotation in this position for the United States women's national team for a long time, since the inception of this women's national team. You can go back in its history and literally point out the 2 to now maybe 3 main goalkeepers of this team over the last 3 decades. So when I see somebody like Jane Campbell with the 7 camps and going into this camp right here, I really want to see her get another start, if not 2, during this time. So in terms of the defenders, let's take a look there. I think we've got a lot of familiar faces here. and we're going to maybe just go like throw out 4 of them. I would, of course, like to see somebody like a Tierna Davidson out there getting some
No
more looks.
surprise, Sandra.
I think if you're going to still keep these young players in there, why not give Becky Sauerbrunn out there, and sort of have her sort of be that anchor for all these players who don't have a lot of time out there? Because next to Becky Sauerbrunn, there's not a lot of caps under these defenders. You've got Tierna Davidson with the least amount of the center backs, so I would like to see her there. And you know what? I'm just gonna be like throw caution to the wind and say I want to see Imani Dorsey on one side and I want to see Sofia Huerta on the other. I think put him out there, see what happens.
I love that. I agree. You have to keep Becky out there. I mean, we still got to get Becky Sauerbrunn a goal. And I foresee that they're working on those set piece opportunity plays where it's centered around Becky Sauerbrunn and she's gonna notch a goal. I hope so, at least. So yeah, Becky Sauerbrunn deserves the start because center back is such a role that you have to be able to gel and learn from the players around you. And having a Becky Sauerbrunn who has 197 caps, she can teach even players like Tierna Davidson who played throughout the Olympics alongside Sauerbrunn. But it's a lot of learning and a lot of instructional organization that comes from those center backs. And you need Becky there to teach Imani Dorsey, Sofia Huerta, Emily Sonnet, even Emily Fox, how to kind of be that voice and that vocal leader in the back. So having Sauerbrunn in there is a must for me. I love seeing Imani Dorsey on the outside there, even Huerta. I would love to see a Fox and a Huerta, 2 players that can really get forward and get into the attack and send those crosses in, be that big attacking presence to get numbers up opportunities on the flanks. Players like that are so fun and good to see on the outside, but having a Becky Sauerbrunn in the center back can hold it down defensively. I could even see like a Dahlkemper getting a start here, just based on everything that's happened and now announcing that she's going to San Diego Wave. I think she has a little bit more confidence in her game and her swagger now, knowing that Casey Stoney at San Diego is essentially building an entire club around Dahlkemper. But I see Sauerbrunn for sure getting the start.
I'm in agreement with you on that. I think with the 2 games in play, I think we're absolutely like, along with possibly that goalkeeper position, we're probably going to see a little bit of rotation at the center back position as well, for sure. And obviously the outside back and fullback positions in this one as well, with the amount of candidates that are on the roster there. In terms of the middle third, it's a little bit of a mix, right? I think we're looking at the midfielder core that's invited into these camps, and you've got 6 midfielders here, and there are a few of them that have experience and have been with the team for quite some times, got World Cup wins under their belt, and then there are players who are still sort of making their way through with the national team, and other midfielders who are new to the space. So I think for either of these games, similar to the back line, I want to see a little bit of a mix. If we're going to see somebody like a Rose Lavelle on the pitch, I want to continue to see if a relationship and chemistry can be grown and developed between her and somebody like a Caterina Macario. I would love to continue see that moving forward. I would love to see somebody like Andy Sullivan continue to get looks at that defensive mid role, because so much of what was coming out post Olympics was, how heavy of an emphasis there was on somebody like a Julie Ertz, who has been still trying to rehabilitate post those Olympic games from her knee injury. So I would love to continue to see Andy Sullivan get some starts in these games as well. And I really do think with her 20 caps that this type of window, that is a player that Vlatko Andonovski is probably going to be taking a much closer look at to keep in his midfield core moving forward. So I would definitely like to see her get some more looks during these Australia games.
How can you not keep an eye on Andy Sullivan? I mean, NWSL, she just won. She scored the penalty kick for Washington Spirit. She became an NWSL champion as a captain, one of the youngest captains in the league at 25 or 26 or so. yes, I think that she needs to get the start. As we kind of talked about with Becky Sauerbrunn in the back line, you need to have someone there that can play defensively. And when you look at this midfield core with Lindsay Horan, Rose Lavelle, Kat Macario, Christy Mewis, Ashley Sanchez, and Andy Sullivan is the defensive player of this crew. Lindsay Horan has tried to play that role, and she can do it because she's talented, but she is much more effective higher up in the midfield. So I think it has to be Andy Sullivan, at least to kind of start and to kind of feel out how Rose and Kat can continue to play together, and even throwing in an Ashley Sanchez in there, which I think will be really great to see because they both play together at Washington Spirit, Andy Sullivan and Ashley Sanchez. So I think that relationship there has already kind of started to grow between those two, which is really beneficial at this national team level. But to see a Sanchez in there with Christy Mewis and an Andy Sullivan, ooh, I think that could be really, really fun to see. Even Kat Macario, Sanchez, and Andy Sullivan in there. I want to see that. But knowing the relationship between Sanchez and Sullivan already there from club play, it'll make the transition for Sanchez a little bit easier. But I foresee Sullivan in that sixth position. And then when and if she does get rotated out, which I'm sure she will, I bet Horan will slide in there, which is honestly just kind of a shame because Herrera does so much better higher up the field when she has the ball and she can be attacking minded and creative. But hey, you have to deal with the players you're given, and Julie Ertz is injured, and this is kind of where we are right now. So any sixes in the NWSL, like, keep playing great because you never know, they might need you.
Yeah, we'll see what comes out of these two games for sure and what it looks like in January. But we've still got to take a look at the front line, Lisa. Similar to the midfielders in this one, there are 6 forwards on the roster here that we ran through with Bethany Balcer, Ashley Hatch, Margaret Purce, Sophia Smith, Lynn Williams, and Morgan Weaver. I'm looking at all of these forwards, and the first thing that pops into my head is that I'm excited. I see all these names and I'm like, yes. And the first one that I'm rolling with is Margaret Purce, because despite her time that she had with the national team in the lead up to the Olympics and then being left off of that roster, she actually only earned 7 caps ahead of that big tournament. And the majority of them were all on the defensive back line at the outside back position. So I would absolutely like to see her get a look as a forward, listed as a forward in the front line. And I wouldn't mind to maybe see her opposite side, somebody like a Lynn Williams or a Sophia Smith, and sort of see that trio and what they can do. And perhaps maybe see some substitutions come into play and have somebody like a Balser or a Hatch with them as well, to sort of have that kind of forward who can evenly distribute and sort of score from all areas. These are both 2 forwards, and Balser and Hatch, who could score off their head, both their feet. And I think it's an exciting time. So I definitely want to see a mix at the trio for sure.
We know how few caps this roster has, but going from the midfield, which probably has the most caps of this group and of this roster, then to the forwards, which most definitely has the least, in Bethany Balcer, 0 caps, Morgan Weaver, 0 caps, Sophia Smith, 10, Margaret Purce, 7, very, very few, Ashley Hatch, 2. Yeah, I'm so excited about this. And as you said, Margaret Purce being a forward, not a defender, is huge. And why would he put her there if he doesn't want to see her? So I foresee Purce getting a start, especially because she also has had a little bit of rest. Gotham being knocked out a bit early in the playoffs. So she's had some time to rest. She's actually been flexing her analyst muscles on some CBS Sports shows, but now it's focusing and time to get into that attacking mindset for her with the United States team, which is a bit of a different look for her. So I don't know how fantastic she's going to do right off the bat. I mean, she will do great things, but I think there will be moments of adjustment for her because she has played defender under Vlatko Andonovski, and I could even foresee formation shifts through this team, and maybe a 3-5-2-3, whatever we could see. I wouldn't be surprised if Vlatko Andonovski switches up formation. But how much fun would it be to see Margaret Purce, Bethany Balcer, Ashley Hatch in the front line? Just speed and skill. You also have to take a look at this group of forwards. And there's no one like a Carly Lloyd or even an Alex Morgan to play that holding 9, that center striker for this team. So those, I think, is really where he's going to be keyed in on. Could you put an Ashley Hatch there in the center of the strikers, and be that holding forward to kind of keep her back to goal, play hold up ball, lay it off to the midfielders underneath of her? Could that be Lynn Williams? Could you ask her to play that role? I think that's going to be the biggest thing that I'm looking at, especially with this forward unit against a really good defensive team in Australia.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. And I'm sure you and I will be texting each other and trying to figure out like, oh, like here's a player that we were really excited to see. It's 2 games and it's 2 windows of games back to back, and it's a quick turnaround. So there will likely to see some rotation with the starts